Imagine this vast frozen wilderness, right? For ages, totally unnavigable. Suddenly it's melting, revealing hidden opportunities, maybe even treasures. So what happens when the world's major powers suddenly see this thawing frontier as, well, the next great prize? Today we're doing a deep dive into the really complex and fast-moving world of Arctic geopolitics. We'll look at territorial claims, this fierce competition, and the undeniable strategic importance of Greenland.
Yeah, and our sources give us a pretty comprehensive picture of how climate change is fundamentally reshaping global power dynamics up there. So our mission today is to pull out the most crucial insights for you, help you understand not just the events unfolding, but why they actually matter for global security and the economy.
Okay, let's kick off with the fundamental driver here.
Yeah.
Climate change. It's kind of astonishing. The Arctic is warming about 3 times faster than the rest of the planet.
3 times. It's staggering.
Yeah, and we've seen sea ice decline, more than 12% every decade since the late 70s. Some estimates even project ice-free summers in the Arctic Ocean maybe as early as the 2030s.
And that dramatic melt has immediate consequences. I mean, areas that were locked away are now becoming accessible for exploration, for exploitation, and crucially, it's opening up entirely new shipping routes. Plus, beyond the geopolitics, you've got a huge impact on the 4 million people living there, including 500,000 indigenous people. Their whole way of life, traditional hunting, it's all being disrupted by thinner ice, changing migration patterns.
Right, and this new accessibility, it basically ignited a scramble for control over what people think are vast, untapped natural resources.
Huge potential, yeah.
Estimates suggest the Arctic holds 13% of the world's undiscovered oil, that's like 90 billion barrels, and 30% of its undiscovered natural gas. You can see why some people are calling it the next Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. And just to zero in, look at Greenland alone. It's believed to have 25 of the 34 critical minerals the EU needs, and 43 of the 50 minerals the U.S. deems critical for national security and the economy. That's a massive concentration.
So with all this potential wealth under the water, how do countries actually stake a claim? What are the rules?
Well, the main framework is the UN Law of the Sea, UNCLS. Basically, it lets nations extend their claims beyond the standard 200 miles if they can scientifically prove their continental shelf extends further out.
Okay, but here's a key point, right? The United States hasn't actually signed UNCLS.
Exactly. And it's noteworthy. It definitely raises questions about America's standing and influence in the international bodies that govern these specific underwater claims.
Which brings us to that really dramatic Lomonosov Ridge dispute. Remember that? Russia claimed this underwater mountain range was part of its shelf.
Oh, yeah, the flag planting.
Right. In August 2007, they sent down mini-subs and planted a titanium Russian flag right on the seabed at the North Pole. Their stated goal was, and I quote, to prove that our shelf stretches up to the North Pole.
It was quite the statement, wasn't it? Very theatrical. But it really highlighted how these claims can become, symbolic power plays. And of course, it provoked strong reactions. Denmark, acting through Greenland, disputes Russia's claim, and Canada's foreign minister at the time, Peter MacKay, famously shot back, saying something like, "This isn't the 15th century. You can't just go around planting flags and claiming territory."
Yeah, good point. But even with all this allure, we should add, getting these resources out is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Logistically, technically, the environment is just brutal.
Definitely. Widespread commercial extraction, probably not happening anytime soon, as our sources put it. And interestingly, most of the estimated oil and gas reserves, they actually lie within existing national boundaries already. So maybe, just maybe, that reduces the chance of direct conflict over those specific resources. Maybe.
Okay, so beyond resources, what about those shipping lanes you mentioned?
Right, the melting ice is opening up new routes way up north. You've got the Northern Sea Route, or NSR, along Russia's coast. Then there's the Northwest Passage, the NWP, through Canadian waters, and potentially in the future, a Transpolar Passage, or TPP, straight over the North Pole. These could seriously cut travel times, like Shanghai to Hamburg via the NSR, maybe 18 days instead of 35 through the Suez Canal.
Wow, that sounds like a game changer. But here's where it gets really interesting, right? There are major catches.
Huge catches. Despite the shorter distances, these routes are tough. The environment is harsh, the ice is unpredictable even when it's melting.
Infrastructure is lacking.
Exactly. Not enough ports, not enough icebreakers for everyone. Search and rescue is a massive challenge, and it's just plain expensive to operate up there. So widespread commercial use, like we said for resources, probably unlikely anytime soon.
And there are political issues, too. For example, the U.S. doesn't even recognize Canada's claim that the Northwest Passage is internal Canadian waters. They see it as an international strait.
Right, so all this, the potential resources, the new routes, the existing tensions, it's shifted the Arctic. It used to be seen as a zone of low tension, lots of cooperation, especially on science. Now our sources describe it as an arena of fierce competition and mistrust, and that's leading to, well, military buildup.
Especially from Russia, it seems. Their Arctic policy has really pivoted, hasn't it, from mainly economic goals to military dominance, particularly after the 2022 invasion of Ukraine.
Definitely. They've reopened old Soviet-era military bases up there, put in advanced radar systems, and their icebreaker fleet is enormous, over 40 nuclear-powered icebreakers. Compare that to the U.S., which has, what, 2 operational heavy icebreakers?
2, yeah. It's a stark difference. And this Russian buildup, it's had ripple effects, hasn't it?
Yeah, huge ones. Look at Finland and Sweden applying to join NATO. That was directly spurred by Russia's actions. And that has, as one source puts it, transformed the regional security landscape. Now you have 7 out of the 8 Arctic nations in NATO. Russia's the only exception.
So the Arctic is now set to play a larger role in the strategic operations, calculations, and exercises of America's most important military alliance. It's a big shift.
It really is. And this brings up a classic problem in international relations. The security dilemma.
Right, where one country's defensive moves are seen as threatening by another.
Exactly. And then that country reacts, builds up its own military, and you risk this spiral, an arms race. It increases the possibility for war due to miscalculation, as our sources warn.
And the U.S. isn't just sitting back, obviously. They have significant assets, too.
Oh, absolutely. More than 50 early warning and missile defense radars spread across Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. Critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they're practicing, too. Just this February 2024, they ran a large-scale combat exercise in Alaska focused on developing tactics for these extreme cold environments.
Which brings us squarely to Greenland. It's fascinating how this huge island, an autonomous territory of Denmark, sits right at the heart of everything.
Geographically, it's crucial. Midway between Moscow and Washington. And it sits within that critical Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom gap, the GIUK gap. Controlling that passage is vital for naval power, especially tracking submarines between the Arctic and the Atlantic.
One source put it pretty bluntly. Whoever controls Greenland controls the Arctic, and control of the Arctic opens the door to influencing the entire planet.
A key piece of that control from the U.S. perspective is Patuxent Space Base. It used to be called Thule Air Base.
Right, America's northernmost military base.
And it's absolutely critical for missile warning, missile defense missions, and enabling U.S. space superiority. It operates a massive ballistic missile early warning system, BMEWS, vital for detecting incoming ICBMs.
It's kind of wild to think, historically, the U.S. has actually tried to buy Greenland multiple times.
Yeah.
1867, 1910, 1936, 1955.
And most recently, President Trump floated the idea again in 2019.
But Greenland and Denmark have always said no.
Consistently, flatly rejected it. Greenland is not for sale, period. And polls back this up. A recent one, January 2025, found 85% of Greenlanders do not want to become part of the U.S. They have a strong sense of identity and desire for self-determination, which reminds you of that recent incident, right? The commander of Patuxent, Colonel Myers, relieved of command in April 2025.
Yeah, reportedly over an email seen as undermining Vice President Vance's visit and his rhetoric about Greenland. It highlights the sensitivities.
Absolutely. Greenland's motto is telling, nothing about us without us. They're pushing for economic self-sufficiency, maybe future independence, and they're also, importantly, cautioning against more militarization in the Arctic.
Okay, so we've covered Russia, the U.S., NATO, Greenland.
Yeah.
But there's one more major player we need to talk about.
China. Right. Even though they're not an Arctic state geographically.
They call themselves a near-Arctic state.
Exactly. And they are actively seeking a role up there, mostly economic for now, through their Polar Silk Road initiative.
And they're putting money down.
Significant investment, yeah. Especially in Russian Arctic energy and resource projects. Like, they have a 20% stake in both the Big Yamal LNG and the Arctic LNG 2 projects.
So how does the U.S. view China's Arctic ambitions?
With concern, definitely. U.S. policymakers worry about China trying to gain influence and maybe establish dual-use projects that could be used for intelligence gathering. But let's be clear, China doesn't currently have a military presence in the Arctic. And strategically, the U.S. Navy has the ability, if needed, to effectively block China's access to the region by controlling key choke points, like the Bering Strait.
So it seems like the Western sanctions on Russia have kind of, paradoxically, created an opening for China.
That's a key dynamic, yes. The sanctions have opened a gateway for China to be more involved in Arctic issues because Russia is increasingly looking to Beijing for investment for technology it can't get from the West anymore.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, given this complex picture, melting ice, resource scrambles, military buildups, China's interest, what does a sort of prudent U.S. strategy look like, according to our sources?
Well, the focus highlighted is primarily on deterrence and stability. So, deterring an attack on the United States and NATO allies and ensuring the lawful use of Arctic waters, end quote. It suggests leveraging strong deterrence, leveraging alliances like NATO, rather than, say, overreacting to every Russian or Chinese move or making aggressive territorial grabs ourselves. On the economic side, maybe opportunistically pursuing shipping routes like the Northwest Passage, perhaps exploring public-private partnerships for resource extraction to reduce dependency on other regions.
Okay, what does this all mean for you listening? I mean, the Arctic is clearly becoming this key arena for energy security, for climate change impact, for global power struggles. But at the same time, those extreme conditions, there's still a massive barrier to immediate economic exploitation. There's this real tension between the potential and the practical reality.
Yeah, and that leaves us with a really important question, doesn't it? As the ice keeps melting, as these global powers jostle for influence, can the world actually find a sustainable balance up there, between strategic competition, economic ambition, and protecting the incredibly fragile environment? Or are we just headed for, well, an inevitable rise in tensions in the high north?